Gratitude. It's never a subject that should not be remembered. And if we think about the present moment and the chaos and the discontent and the concern, oftentimes we forget that part of the healing of anything is gratitude. To be thankful and not looking away at what one doesn't have, but looking closer to home at what one does have. Because gratitude begins a type of journey of forgiveness. Meaning if I'm grateful that I'm a human being. I'm grateful that I'm alive. I'm grateful that I'm healthy. I'm grateful that I have a roof over my head and I have a family. I'm grateful that I know love in this life, which I know is so difficult and impossible for so many. But I'm grateful in the sense that it's not at the expense of something, but really the honoring of something. Because sitting in this painting of mine, Revelations in Pink, Mothership, part of the generosity of the spirit here, if we think about it, is the gratitude for the human journey, that we're the outcome of something remarkable. And we could argue that historically speaking, we've never gotten away from our condition. We've always thought, well, what's the point? Why should I be grateful? It's so difficult. And this is where it's not an answer, because you could argue music doesn't answer something, art doesn't answer something. It gives us a different framework, a different way to be grateful. I could argue that I'm very grateful for Beethoven, because I found when I was young that often when I'd reach a type of emotional blockage, like I'd be drawing, I'd be writing, I would put on Beethoven, and the passion that I felt from that music helped me, nourished me, allowed me to essentially breathe past my own resistance with the qualities that were generous and that I could be grateful for because they too were part of my human expression, part of my human story. That's when I start to realize with a lot of how my life has been, a lot of what I've learned, is that all of the art I talk about was triggered, as I often say, by 9/11 and the towers, the collapse, the tragedy that brought us down. In the symbolical theater here, it brought us out of the towers of Babel, of money and God, meaning the collapse of the great, I have more than you do. And it brought us to our knees, brought me to my knees. And so for these 23 years that I've been being grateful, that I've been allowed to tell a story that began with, I'm grateful for my daughters. I'm grateful for my wife and my community. I'm grateful for those that show up and still care. And I don't need it to convince the neighbor that he should be grateful or those people should be grateful, but to honor those that I encounter and say, I am grateful. I'm grateful that you've endured your human story, that you've been a unique journey of the human question. And whether you're a farmer or a philosopher, or a saint or a thief, it's a quality, a character, that when we become forgiving, like the theater of consciousness, we become grateful for all of the characters of the psyche. Because it's not what we should be condemning, but to be grateful that our story as human is revealed both in the outer world, in that theater of who we think we are. And the outer world asks us, well, what can you be grateful for? And in the chaos of the city and in the disappointment of debt and the despondency that one never gets to where one thinks one ought to be and somehow just becomes what one is, there's nature calling us back. That's why this painting of mine is first technology. It's paint and breath. It doesn't tell us what to do or what to believe. It allows us to reset, to give ourselves permission to be grateful not simply for ourselves, but for the whole and holy human condition. When we think about a symphonic self, a love that isn't in one time, but actually exists as the process that has allowed time itself to exist, then like in the painting, we begin to return to the story of the mother, of matter, mater, mother, of the atoms, of the self, woven of the human condition. And her story, which begins with a question of when did your atoms become so generous as to stick together to create one of you? When you remember this level of your own greater generosity and think about your body, what's so generous? Why does it stick together? No matter what your mood, you remain together. And in olden times, it was always the symbol of the eye in the heart, that the sacred heart is not your heart or my heart, it's the human heart that was in each of us. And that's the story here of the apple, of the gift of life, not given to me alone, but given to you, given to being human. And the story, the revelation here being that if we don't like the stories we're telling, tell a story we can live with. Because matter, mater, mother, the knowledge of our atoms, she says, there are no evil atoms. If we don't like our stories, tell better stories. And that's this story of returning finally to recognize that the gratitude we feel, the gratitude I feel as an artist, the gratitude I feel that this is flowing through me, because it allows me to recognize that the deeper our gratitude, the more we recognize our true humanity. Because our deeper humanity, like nature, isn't that one tree stops where another begins, but the roots interweave one within another, and that's why this is my home. I just played with my granddaughter. I just saw my daughters. I saw my wife, and I've seen friends today. And I'm grateful. I'm grateful that this life has brought together a narrative that does ask us. Maybe it's more than just the artists of every generation must reinvigorate the myths. Maybe it's deeper. Maybe the myths must reinvigorate the artists of every generation. And that here the mother's saying, the art is not a product. It's your approach to life. And if your approach to life begins with gratitude, you'll begin to not simply see this, but you begin to see this. And in the greater generosity, in the atomic structure of the breath of life, we will begin to be breathed by it. And as we do, our gratitude will grow, because it's not to be somewhere else. It's to finally allow the truth that joy is the font of being, and life is the true primary relationship, and love is the revealer that we're not here by a mistake, but only gratitude, only a deeper forgiveness can bring us home, because to find home means we have to tell a story that brings us together. Gratitude.